Honorary millennial, even though I'm Generation Zygote. So that's what our wonderful co-host Jackie calls me in our generation because we're little babies. So we're Gen Z, but she likes calling us Generation Zygote.
It's funny. I like it. But your guys are not really zygotes anymore. I mean, you're what year are you in school?
Year 5.
Year 5 of
Yep.
college?
Yep.
Cool. And what are you studying?
I am studying civil engineering. I'm the guy that's gonna fix the roads eventually.
Oh, I love that. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we do roads, bridges, highways, basic civics, city infrastructure, construction, housing, that type of stuff. So anything that involves really civil infrastructure, that's basically our area.
Cool. So if we ever did get an infrastructure plan or a jobs guarantee or literally anything remotely like that, that would be a plus for you.
Oh, I'd be cheering very hard because in America, nothing gets done without a little liquid money incentive. You know how like in order to get something to move on a gear, you need oil. But using that analogy, in our capitalistic system, money is the lubricant. So that type of infrastructure planning, issuing federal dollars into that plan will help really lubricate the process to fix more of our city infrastructure. So that would definitely help people like me who are working and need the extra dollars. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're working right now?
not currently. I'm just still studying in school, so I'm still looking at like internships and that type of stuff.
Do you have to have an internship to graduate? I know we were talking about that last time, about schools, and we can go into college and stuff, or we can skip it. It's up to you.
Not my college. I mean, it's not really required. It's heavily incentivized, but it's not really something that's required currently.
What school do you go to, or do you not want me to ask you that?
Eh,
It's
yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's okay.
That's cool. I was just curious for me. I didn't mean to broadcast it. Never
Oh,
mind.
that's fine.
Moving on. Tell us everything about where you live.
Right. Yeah, it's my college I go to. It's pretty nice. It's fun so far, but I go to a pretty having a pretty conservative ass field too. So that's a lot of fun. Like we were learning, like our professor was trying to teach us about what does it mean to like have a company that has a union or whatever. And it's like, well, you're pretty right wing there. Like I'm in class, like right winger.
Wait, what it means to have a company? What?
Like we were talking about unions and stuff. Like he was
Oh,
saying, oh, unions are good, but sometimes they could be bad because
oh my
I'm
God.
like, I'm like, oh God, please stop talking. Please stop talking. So
I mean, it's fucked up to think that that's what they're teaching, like the CEOs of tomorrow, right?
it's scary. It's more scary than fucked up because that type of rhetoric is being not only beaten down on you socially, but really in your work life too, which is very problematic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. My brain is a little bit dead right now, so
Yeah, we'll get through this together. It'll be great.
I know you just had a stream too, right? I didn't
Oh
get a chance
yeah,
to watch it, but I saw you had one.
yeah. We had a stream earlier today on FHO. It's a Nick's show, but I think he had like a Black leftist panel today. He's been having a couple of them actually. I was a part of this one. He needed another person, so I was more than happy to join him on that. We had a lot
Oh,
of big discussions in general. One of the biggest ones is we had a certain pothead comedian who smokes weed when he wakes up in the morning come on our show, and people lost their shit. So that was that was
you
a lot of.
talking?
What'd you say?
Who are you talking about, Jimmy?
Yeah,
People lost
because
their
because
like in a
we
bad.
because we brought up like the Boogaloo Boys situation, which apparently is still a hot topic on the left. And there was a clip that we put out, like 2 minutes clips of him just talking, like no assumptions, and they lost their shit on Twitter. So we've been having to put out that fire because you had
No.
some people who were completely unreasonable and obviously didn't watch the video. So that was problematic. So we kind of discussed it, and I kind of broke down in the video some of the criticisms which at times could be valid, and some of them that weren't valid. So I really broke down in that video that everyone should check out about really movement building, about electoral politics, about organizing, and as well as political ideology. Because I broke down how left movements and this other group of people who some individuals want to work with on a temporary basis, how it could really harm the left movement going in the future, because we could easily be co-opted. And on the other hand, we talked about really not only the differences, but really the common similarities that we may have. So everyone should really check that out. It's pretty important in my eyes. I've literally took like 2 weeks to like think about that in my head before I actually spoke on it, because it was so hot during the time that nuance wasn't really given. It was either you're for it or against it. And so I just wanted to take some time to digest that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. Oh, whoa. Oh, whoa, whoa. Lighting effects.
Sorry.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me. I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Dore, and I saw that interview with him and who else was there? It was
JB and Nick.
Jamie and Nick. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good interview, and I thought that the Boogaloo Boy interview was really enlightening. I mean, it seems to me like that he just presented what this guy was saying. It's not even like, I think that the people on the left who are automatically reactionary to things like Jimmy Dore, to words like Boogaloo Boy, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're not helping us. You need to stop and think about what you're saying. You need to stop and think about what is being presented, the information that is being presented to you, and make a judgment. You don't need to echo other people. You don't need to, and I'm, it's there are a lot of people who feel like the left is their identity and that's who they are. And if they didn't have that, they wouldn't know who they are. Right. So like they cling to that and they say, you can be in the left, but you can't be in the left. Right. Like you're my kind of left. You're my AOC left. I'm an AOC left, but Jimmy Dore, no, he's too brash. I don't like his mood. It's not my mood. I don't identify. You know what I'm saying? It's like, the point of the left is that we're all trying to work together on this planet, right? We're not trying to be at each other's throats or competition or exclusive in any way. This is about equality. We are striving towards equality, whether you are a socialist or not. I think that it's ridiculous to alienate someone because, they don't jive with you, or on some level, maybe you're afraid. I mean, like Jimmy is very vituperative and very forceful. And I find it hilarious because I come from Jersey and everyone around me is like that. And I'm very cool with that kind of, manner. But some people are just very intimidated by that, as I have found out personally, because I'm usually the person that puts people off by cursing or saying the truth to their face that they don't want to hear it. But, I think that we need to tell people who try to limit who's on the left to stop saying that, to just you're not helping us.
Yeah. And I broke down too that litmus tests are necessary, but they can be extensive at times. Like if you look at like many different left organizations, like predominantly too, like the Black Panthers Party, especially the ones that's championed by Fred Hampton, like their rules were strictly anti-capitalist and anti-racist. Only two. All the other ones we can negotiate on. So I kind of sympathize with that. Like, hey, but I do recognize too, back then, those were the litmus tests back then and much easier. Nowadays, holy shit, we have a lot of litmus tests and stuff. So it's very hard to maneuver and bring stuff in because not everyone's going to share that same type of ideology or really belief. So I believe in like the modern left And not, since you're right, not everyone's going to be for our left ideology in general. Doesn't mean we aren't going to have to work with them. But at the same time, I feel like on the left, there's so much focus on ideology and not really how to change people's material conditions on the ground to warrant them to be more open to our ideology. It's almost like a quid pro quo. While at the same time, yes, you want to help your community and help each other, but by doing so, you're showing people that, hey, there's a better way than the capitalistic system that's been exploiting me, but gives me a few treats to keep me along with them when I have other socialists and communists, other people on the left who are organizing and are not only helping me, but are teaching me that this is how you can help your community and not be dependent on the state. You can depend on each other and not just the system. So I believe and it's what I'm talking about is materialism. And I think that's what appealing to one's material needs in order to bring about change. That's something that I feel like the left is missing, instead of just raving on about ideology, even though it's important, but it's not necessarily the first step.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that. And I mean, it brings up the question where, well, what are we testing in a litmus test, right? So if your litmus test is to find out whether I'm an anarchist enough for you, even though I'm a leftist and I ain't a capitalist, maybe that litmus test right now is not the most useful thing to build the left. Right. However, if your litmus test has to do with, whether or not you're a secret, corporatist or even leaning that way, or eat the propaganda and say, thank you, please some more, then, that may be a profitable litmus test. I mean, I don't think that we should, blanket say litmus tests are bad or whatever, but, we have to also be able to, I completely agree with you that we have to be able to reach over the aisle or whatever Democrats say, and to other leftists, to people who may not share our specific ideology, and just say, all right, maybe I don't want the same utopia that you want. Maybe our utopias look different, but can we work together on the commonalities? And I think that, hopefully we can do that, because it's necessary if we're going to get anywhere as a left in this country.
Oh yeah, I agree 100% with you on that. I mean, that's one of really the biggest struggles, is how to work with individuals or groups who don't really share your core ideology, but you still have the same material conditions. That's the crazy part. And on a, like I was describing, difference between there's people who are ANCAPs and people who are socialists or anarcho-communists, where it's like you both want to abolish the existing machine, which we all acknowledge is shitty, but right. It's just the end goal fight of are we going to revamp capitalism? Are we going to revamp and do socialism or eventually communism? And so some of those criticisms are valid in the sense that, okay, how is this going to affect things long term? But short term, you do agree on these principles. It's just about, okay, once we finish this goal, or if we get close to finishing it, what are the future steps? Are you going to stick along with us to continue to fight? Or are you going to say, hey, thanks, bye, I'm out? And, that's another thing. So that's one of the main concerns.
I think, it's important for us to be okay with that eventuality. I mean, I think that, my view of the world, getting trippy, hippy dippy here for a second, my view of the world is that, we're there are so many, forces pushing and pulling things in different directions. You can never predict, even if you designed a utopia that everyone agreed with, you probably couldn't make it exist in the way that you envision it, because everybody's envisioning it differently, one. And secondly, it's, there's so much left to chance. There's so much left to chaos, so a society is not something that we've developed. A society is something that has grown, right? So if we want a society, then we need to start you know, I mean, to continue the gardening metaphor, like, you know, if we're trying to shape a shrub, like, you know, if you want it to be an oval and I want it to be a circle, like we can cut the edges down together. I don't know, this is sounding stupid now. I really had a thought there for a second.
It made sense to me.
You're cute, thanks. No, like, I'm gonna cut that shrub off at the pass right there. It wasn't working out for me. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you know, we have to be able to work together, and we have to be okay with the fact that working together is an issue-based process. You know, everybody who's interested in Medicare for all might not be interested in co-ops or, you know, in, you know, socializing the government any further than that, or, you know, whatever. So, and that, you know, that has to be okay, because those people are like those people are one force, right? And we're another force, and you know, it's I'm gonna fucking cut that off the past too, man. I'm gonna cut that whole part out. That was so
I mean, you were getting there.
I was getting to something.
Like, I think what you're referring to is like many leftist movements. Like, some people want a dictatorship of the proletariat, where it's like working class people dominate all forms of capital, all forms of capital, economic, whatever you name it. And to get there, it's pretty difficult. Not everyone's going to be on the same page about some issues. And some people are just like, look, you know, I don't necessarily, not that I'm against it. I just don't want to do it. And so, like you're saying, it's like not everyone's going to be uniformly for everything.
Right.
Is valid. It's just at the same time, okay, if one person goes for this particular topic that we're all pushing, we need one more person to replace them on that issue. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just constantly, how do you grow the bench and to really keep people more involved so that the movement sustains itself? You know, because if you look at the system of capitalism we're in, and especially look at the state of the left right now in terms of keeping the movement strong, it's very difficult to keep people inside the movement in terms of getting their engagement. And it's also, you know, due to the multiple recessions, COVID, all that type of stuff, it really depletes turnout. It depletes the ability to pressure the politicians. COVID right now killed any ability to have strikes or protests because people don't want to get sick. So that's the biggest break the establishment's ever had. Because imagine if we went through all this type of stuff and you could literally
counter that point, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, the BLM protests last year was during COVID too, right?
Exactly.
Those were the biggest protests we've had in a long time.
Oh yeah, you're right. I totally forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah, you're actually right about that. Thanks for that correction.
Yeah,
So what the fuck was I getting at?
No, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, because you had a good point, but I didn't. I'm so sorry. Fuck.
Oh no, you're right. I totally fudged that. So yeah, I'm guessing what I was saying is it could have been more frequent and more longly sustained, you know, without the criticism, because of course mainstream media is like, oh, see, you know, like you hear it from CNN, oh, they're protesting out there and it's COVID, you know, they're not social distancing, some aren't wearing masks or whatever. So it's like they're completely disregarding the argument why they're protesting, why they're standing up for certain policies, why they're standing up for their rights, all to smear them as saying, oh, they're not 6 foot distancing, oh, some aren't wearing masks. You know, same thing with like the movement for George Floyd. Oh, see, let's completely ignore what they're standing up for. Oh, they're burning down police sinks. Oh, they're throwing water bottles at the cops when the cops have, I don't know, every militarized gear available. So it's just more in line about how the media can misconstrue things to separate the systemic struggles and the policies that people are standing up for, all to keep the state going without criticism.
You're absolutely right about that. And actually that you know brings me into another point too, that you know, I think the idea of Biden, even though he hasn't done anything remotely progressive, you know, the media and the complicity of Bernie and the Progressive Caucus are inflating Biden in the public eye as some kind of a progressive when he just isn't. I mean, he's been either continuing or doubling up on the stuff Trump has been doing. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And we are, I think, right now pacified because we had a little bit of infusion of cash. We have, some kind of hope. When it comes to the time where people are starting to get evicted back out on the streets, that's coming up soon. We hopefully will start to realize that things are not changing, in the way that we had hoped, in the way that we voted for. I'm hoping for that. And I hope that, honestly, this summer too, that we get back out on the streets. That we should strive to make this summer even bigger than last summer. It's not like, cops have stopped killing Black people, so let's keep fighting,
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the struggle is that culturally, by Mr. Cheeto Man being in office, it was easier to create a cultural backlash with warranted liberals to actually hit the streets. But we know historically, whenever there's Democrats in power, especially like Obama or Clinton or now Joe Biden, liberals are more readily to rationalize the struggles of poor people and Black people of color, saying, well, we have a chance here with whatever Democrat president is. This isn't really the reason why they're doing this. This is the strategy here. Whether it's a guy like Donald Trump or Bush or Reagan or whatever, they're like, we have to fight. We have to hit the streets. We have to fight. We have to resist. And it's like, it's exhausting. That's why my Twitter handle is I have shit-lived derangement syndrome, because I could rail on about how terrible they are in terms of trying to align with them when they're pretty much partisan hacks, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the real battle of the left right now, right? Is to sort of convince shit libs that they are, that what they were doing during the Trump administration was the right thing to do all the time. That Biden is actually no different than Trump in reality. And that we need to be fighting for these things. We need to be fighting for the freedom of immigrants. We need to be fighting for, the freedom of every marginalized person, like, all the time, right? So the thing I think the problem is, I'm tired. I'm totally tired. Sorry. And and the other thing is too, is I have to sing Disney music all day because I take care of a special needs girl. And I end up making a lot of the words because I don't know them. So I'm just by the end of the day. So sorry about that. But anyway, getting back to Serious Brain. What was I talking about?
You're talking about libs and conservatives.
Right. So
yeah, we were talking about how difficult it is to left to work with either of them on the political spectrum.
right.
My personal opinion on libs is that they're for you initially. Well, at least they pretend that they're for you initially. Like, we agree with what the criticisms, we agree with the strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they just actually, hold on. I think I got that backwards. So conservatives never agree with you initially. No, I know I had it right. So libs agree with you initially, but they disagree with the end goal.
Right.
While there's conservatives, it's the opposite. They will full stop. Like, they aren't in agreement at all. You actually have to beat them at their own game for them to be subdued to actually agree with what you're saying. So that's what the problem with the left has. It's like, well, when you work at libs, they're like, oh, it's like last summer. Oh, let's fight. BLM in your bio, ACAB in your bio. But then when push comes to shove, when you actually have to do the dirty work and convincing politicians, protesting, mutual aid, all that type of stuff, silence. Oh, just vote Biden. Shut the fuck up, basically. And it's just like, what? And then you have conservatives on the other hand, some of them, not all of them, but there's some conservatives where it's like, okay, we don't agree with the end goal of like socialism and communism, but we may agree on some of these things initially, which in the end, some people on the left, especially of movement building, it just brings you towards closer to social democracy, but it doesn't actually give you communism or socialism that you want as an end goal, right? And so it's almost like the system is put in place to only give you as much to keep you in the system, but not enough where you can overtake it. So I think that's why if you want to do everything electorally, it's a rigged system on purpose. It's just a casino for the rich, and we're supposed to lose every time. So that's why we have to organize outside the system and really just wreck and abolish the casino.
That's an excellent way to put it. I like that. I want to make t-shirts that say abolish the casino now. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of excellent points there. And I think I remembered what I was trying to say before, if you wouldn't mind taking a little road trip back to where we were talking about 2 conversations ago. I think that, fear is a great motivator. And the libs were petrified of Trump, petrified. And it wasn't just because of the racism necessarily. No, I'm phrasing this wrong. It was because of his personality as well as his politics. Let me put it that way. Right? Because he was a loudmouth bully. And most people are afraid of the bully on the playground. And when it came to Trump, he was really good. In fact, they what's that? I am just having no brain power today. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. It's been a long day for all of us. So, but I think to add to your point about how Donald Trump scared libs, it's obviously hilarious to me because in ways, Donald Trump reminds liberals of their 1950s Republican father.
Right. Well, exactly, right? Because a lot of libs are boomers, right? And boomers remember their like silent generation parents with fear, I think, sometimes, because those people had to live through the Depression and they were a little more severe in their life. Whereas, boomers got to grow up during a boom period and through several boom periods. And it statistically helped them prosper a lot better than any of the following generations did. So to them, it's okay, I'm going to cut that thought off and move on to how I feel like so yes, so Trump, symbolizes like that generation, right? The silent generation and the past in some ways. And I think that so I think that libs are partially afraid of like their abusive dad, right? Like I'm very generalizing right now, but I mean, yeah, I think that it's safe to say that men at that time were raised not to be emotionally sensitive to children. Let me put it that way. So, the boomers have a natural fear of that kind of person. Okay, so what I was trying to say before is that Trump statistically looked for people who had that in their personality, that had were bullies, were interested in certain things, like he targeted them on Facebook, right? Like that's Cambridge Analytica, right? I'm trying to pull up all this stuff from 4 years ago out of my brain, and it's really hard right now.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is that there's a yin yang effect. Like liberals, Trump scared the crap out of liberals because it reminds them of their conservative father, who at times could be an asshole and wouldn't care about them necessarily emotionally. But I think that's also the main reason why conservatives liked him at first, because he's like, well, he's like your 1950s conservative dad, but he pays the bills, he takes care of you. That's why a lot of conservative women and conservative men back in 2016, Trump said, hey, I'm going to give you health care, I'm going to give you your job back, we're going to make America great again, we're going to get out of these wars. And people are like, better than what Hillary is selling. Yeah. So that's why essentially get elected. We all know who's full of shit now. So don't
Right.
attack us on Twitter if you see this interview.
I'm already getting attacked. That's fine.
No, that's fine.
Right.
So that's basically the economy, and it makes it difficult now because when you try to explain to liberals like this is all a charade, like the establishment, this is how they make their money off of fear. They literally make money off of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like when mainstream media puts out Trump clickbait every day when he was president, getting views, that makes them money because the more eyes they get, the more people want to give money to put their ads on TV, which in the end is the more money they make. So, and look at mainstream media ratings right now. They have fallen through the tubes. They're down 70% from this time last year. So,
And they're
and
still playing the Trump card.
oh yeah, they're still talking about the insurrection and stuff. And it's not,
Yeah.
it's like,
But it's not selling as good as it was, right?
oh,
So
no.
that's because Trump isn't the threat he what perceived threat that he was, right? So he, I think that it's, when you have a sense, like fear does many things, right? Like if you're afraid enough and you feel like there's no hero, there's no hope, then you're more likely to cover over the problems and accept it. Okay. So let's take Biden, for example, because Biden is supposedly already the hero against Trump, and Trump was all the bad in this country, and Biden represents all the good, and he's even got Bernie and AOC saying that now, then he, we like the hero, like the hero is now without, like they're, like it makes sense to me that liberals aren't afraid anymore. Like the hero won, right? Like we're living in happily ever after right now, right? So like if
You know what surprises me though?
yeah, please.
Yeah, what surprises me is that liberals have completely forgotten about what happened in 2008. Like this very same hero worship for Biden is what they've done to Obama. And people are now feigning outrage. Why is Biden not pressuring Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin? Why is Biden allowing this to happen? And people are like, have you not heard of Joe Lieberman back in 2010 or back when Obama was president, some of these conservative Democrats? And it's like, these are what the Democrats do. And so and politics is all about personality nowadays. It's been that way since Reagan, to be honest, because Reagan was the actor president. Like he admitted himself, I wouldn't do my job as well as I could if I wasn't an actor. I don't think anybody could do the job. He literally said that. Same thing with Clinton. Clinton, he was the aviator sunglasses playing the saxophone guy. Look
And
at
there's
Bush.
that confirm that as well. There have been studies that say, it was even on the West Wing in one of the episodes back in the day, like that people make their judgment like 80% based on perceived personality rather than fact or policy. Yeah.
Right. That's how Bush got his second term. People say, I'd rather have a beer with Bush than with John Kerry. And it's like, wow, that's how we're basing our politics now.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, pretty faced black man, charming and handsome Obama. People liked him. Of course, he ran a pretty progressive campaign in terms of faking it. But then when he actually got elected, he showed his true colors as the corporatist warmonger he is. So that's a different story. And if you look at Biden, he didn't even have to fake it. That's the scary part. Obama had to fake it. Hillary had to fake it. We knew she was full of shit, but she tried.
Yeah.
Biden, he was like, oh, I'm full of shit, but you have no fucking choice. And it's like, wow. Wow. He didn't say it, but that's basically how the campaign was ran. He was like, and he's actually, no, he did say, he said, look, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
That's right. I fucking saw that clip. That's unreal.
Yeah.
Like, so how do you think that's acceptable?
Oh, when he saw that, I was like, okay, Joe, this is for you, Joe.
Yeah.
So, and also too, I saw the clip of him earlier, I believe, last year, saying, look, I have no empathy. I have none for young people. No empathy. I'm like, wow, thanks, Joe.
People, I remember that. Oh my God, that pissed me off.
Oh, that pissed me off. I was like, nope, I am. Ooh, Joe. Yeah. So it's just it's just hard, as young people in this country, we have the least representation in Congress. the least amount of pay upon our generation. Like the previous like our parents' generation, when they were young, I think they owned 15% more in the percentage of wealth than we do around the
Wow.
same age.
Wow.
So yeah, that's really bad. So we get no representation in Congress, very little. We
Honestly, that's a really validating statistic, because I've had so many arguments with Xers that are like, oh, we went through a depression too. Like, you just have to work harder.
Yeah,
No.
see, Gen Xers are the cousins of boomers, and it's at hard time to have conversations with them. You know, half of them are good, half of them come to us, half of
Yes.
them go to the boomers. I mean, all statistics show that. Like, I'm not just hanging out of my ass, so that's what's true.
Yes.
You have I'm being generous with 10%. You have 5% of boomers who are really on the left in terms of that type of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
what scares me is that at some point, millennials will really transition to be more conservative. And that was around when Obama left office. Now, I'm not sure the
Mm-hmm.
numbers on that are now, but that was pretty scary because people saw
Wow.
that the Democrats were complete losers, which they are. So, like, why am I
Right.
wasting my time with them when I can actually get something feasible with Republicans, even though we know that's the cheese in the trap? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like that's really the problem. It's like you give all this energy. So I'm speaking in like basic politics. I'm not putting a left spin on this. So if look at the apolitical millennial, I invest money and time into the Democratic Party. I get nothing for it, and they're fucking losers, so they lose every time. So I get nothing on a return my investment. But I go to Republican, I get some wins, but I get screwed in the end too. So it's like, well, I might as well get something temporarily beneficial to me if I'm both going to be screwed in the end. So that's why people, especially a lot of millennials who are political, end up thinking more conservative minded, and it's all because that's how the system is intended. The system is intended not for you to overthrow it to get the big reward. It's to constantly accept shittier options with a tiny benefit, all to uphold the system. So that's what people really don't understand, which makes it very difficult to really go about this and really
Yeah.
change the society.
Yeah. That's very insightful. I completely agree. And honestly, I think that because the thing is too, like when the 2008 uh recession, depression, hit, um we were taken completely by surprise, right? As young people.
We also had
And
a pandemic too back then.
yeah, oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure. And I would love to, I want to get to Gen Z next, because I want to hear what you have to say about it. But for us, like, it had to do, like, because it hit us differently than the people around us, Xers and Boomers. Nobody else was talking about being as poor as we actually were, right? They were calling us, all kinds of lazy and whatever the hell, the killers of the economy and whatever, because nobody understood that, it literally hit us as a depression. We had 25% unemployment during 2010, the height of the depression. That is depression level unemployment rate. That we were so afraid of not being able to get a job, and we were so gaslit because everybody around us was not experiencing the same thing unless you were the same age, that we felt like we had to just, like, plow under our problems. We felt like if we complained about it, we would be seen as, like a whiny millennial, like entitled, right? That was the word. Everybody called us entitled constantly. And
Ungrateful.
so, right, like, we were always so afraid. I remember all of my friends being so afraid of being called an entitled millennial, because that meant you didn't get the job. That meant that you succeed in that interview, So I remember a lot of fear for a long time. And honestly, that's why, well, I was talking to Jackie on DM, and I said, I kind of believe that millennials are the silent generation, because we were too afraid to speak out about our problems for a very long time. And we still are. We
Right, like
still feel
there's
like if we just, please the boomers enough, they will end up, donating their wealth to us when they die. That's what we're hoping for.
Oh no, the boomers are just gonna keep what's theirs. You know, like they always say, work hard, you get what you
I'm
want. If not, sucks to suck. Like that's literally their ideology, and it best fits the capitalistic system because it's winners and
yeah,
losers. Like that's the
yeah.
whole mentality. And so, like what you're speaking on is facts. Like there's Gen Z, Gen Y, which is millennial, Gen Xers, Boomers, Silent Generation. The one prior is the Greatest Generation, which was the one born, I believe, around the 1890s, survived through World War One, the pandemic of 1919, World War Two. Like that's the Greatest Generation, right?
Okay.
So even them, they're about the action. The Silent Generation was a little bit after, born, I believe, 1930s, I believe. So it's like just it's either the beginning of the Great Depression going into the World War II, that type of a generation.
Hmm.
So if you look at the generational breakdowns, it's basically valid. You know, the Greatest Generation, all about the action. Silent Generation, yeah, we're about the action too, but we're not going to talk about it. And then it goes to the baby boomers. They brag about, oh, you know, this is what we are, this is what we're for. You have to do this. And then there's Gen Xers are like, hey, we're working just as hard. You know, it's not fair to say that about us.
Right.
And so every generation has really their own tick and how they go about talking about their struggles. You know, it's like the boomers like keep your head down, do what you got to do, don't complain, hard work. Gen Xers like, well, we do the exact same thing.
That's how they would categorize their parents. Boomers say
True.
would say that about their parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
like, well,
I so.
but I think a lot of times there's an absence of talking about how worker productivity has always increased in America since the greatest generation to the silent to boomers to Gen Xers, yada yada yada. But the terms in turn, well, increase, yeah. But in terms of the workers' pay being attached to worker productivity, the divide has steadily increased around that same amount of time. So when prior generations tell the younger ones, well, just work as hard as us, you know, you just have to keep your head down. It's like, what do you think we're fucking doing? It's just we're not getting compensated as much as you guys did back in your time. And also, too, there's a complete ignorance of not them being ignorant, but not knowing that the and by the way, the silent generation had it even harder than the boomers. I mean, think about it: World War One, World War Two, pandemic of 1919, all that type of stuff. And you have to look at the recessions, the depressions, the economic factors in which they've had to live their lives. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically what I have to say about that.
Yeah, 300%. I agree with everything you said there. Um, I think that crap, I had a point and I forget now. It's okay. It'll come back to me one day. Oh, yeah, no, but I wanted to start talking about Gen Z though, because I think that you guys have an understanding of the system that even millennials definitely don't. Like you
Right.
you guys you guys see it and call it out for what it is, and you're not even there's like no room for fucking around with you guys. Like you guys were like responsible for the guillotine joke. I think that
Yeah,
was
we
you.
were. We do everything. We do memes. We run this movement. We run this. We run the left. Like
Yeah.
all we say is, look, don't get in the fucking way. Enjoy the ride. It's gonna be fun. You know, I get along with more Gen Xers than millennials a lot of times because Gen Xers are like, look, we've had to do with the baby boomers, so I know exactly how you guys feel. So I love the Gen X Gen Z alliance. That's why me and Jackie Poles get along so well. So
Absolutely.
it's notice how it's always the millennials and the boomers fighting, but Gen Xers and Gen Z are like it's like that one meme where it's like the Gen Xers. I mean, it's one meme where it's like boomers and millennials are fighting, and then there's Gen Xers giving like the Gen Z a bottle of wine. So it's because
Yeah,
it's like we're in this together. We know what's going on. Let's not fighting. And boomers and millennials like fighting for like it's like what are you guys doing? Like it's just frustrating.
yeah. I mean, well, the reason is because boomers promised us their life. I mean, my parents were boomers, not Xers. So, but I think I'm weird because I'm an older millennial and my parents were older when they had me. So I think it's weird for me to say that. But I was very close with my parents. I love them so much. I love that they were hippies. They trained me to be a hippie, clearly. Like I absolutely loved them and their hippiness, and it never occurred to me until I started hitting misfortune in my life, that a lot of the things that the hippie movement sort of embraced or represented were very privileged. I mean, like, even like, I love Joni Mitchell, clearly. So I remember this one song that she did. I forget which song it was, but she, in the lyrics, it was like, you're you come from a rich family, but you turned down your parents' wealth and became a hippie. And like, that was looked up to. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's so weird to even think about, like, after the fact, because I sang that shit like in high school, like it was my favorite song in the world, like I never didn't even think about it for a hot second. Because I think here it is. Millennials as kids enjoyed a boom period as well. That's why. Because millennials, I guess, are
Exactly.
baby boomers. Right? We were kids during the tech boom, and that's why we love the 90s, and that's why we fucking love Disney, and like and why all the girls in my generation love chibi and things that are cute and fucking all that stuff.
Yeah,
Kawaii.
like I've only
Yeah.
experienced, see, my political hopes and dreams died in 2005 because
How old were you
prior
then?
to then, huh?
How old were you then?
6.
Yeah.
So Gen Zs were like, fuck this. We've seen 2 recessions, we've seen 2 pandemics. So it's just like, where's our boom?
Mm-hmm.
And if we have a boom, are we sure we're gonna actually get the compensation that our prior generations have had? So that's why Gen Z, we're not, millennials are like, okay, let's try to work through the current political construct. We tried
Mm-hmm.
Obama. Let's try the Democrats. And Gen Z like, burn this shit down now. We're just burning it down. Like, we're the burn it down generation because, like I said, we've seen 2 recessions, 2 pandemics, the COVID one and the H1N1 epidemic.
Yeah.
That was bad. I had H1N1. It was not fun. Trust me.
Yeah. But
H1N1 and pneumonia at the same time. Lord have mercy. Coughing, wheezing every 5 seconds, lungs on fire, front and back. So
mm,
it's
oh, good.
not fun at all. So that was pretty bad. But in general, Gen Zers like myself, we are everything I think that you were looking for in really every modern movement. We have the energy. We're willing to. We're not discriminatory based on sex, gender, race, all that type of stuff. I'm probably leaving some out. So if it's any one of those, we're not against it. So I think that's really important too, because once you show people that, hey, it's not about who you are, it's about the material conditions and the social construct that the establishment is putting on us that we have to defeat. That's when we can all come together. Like, the most beautiful thing is when um, kids of all ages protested during the George Floyd murder.
Yes.
People are coming out, different ages, genders, sexes, races. It was a beautiful thing. Like in Seattle, there was a bunch of, I think it was Portland or Seattle, one or the other. There are a lot of moms who are in their 30s, who
Yes.
are out there.
Moms.
They showed solidarity with those who are Black protesting. They formed a line to protect them from the fascist police state. So that was something very beautiful to see. They had their hands up singing "Please Don't Shoot Me" with their strollers on their
Yeah.
side. Like, that
Yeah.
is something beautiful. And we really have to capitalize on that moment to really bring them together. And I think the best, like we said earlier today, the best thing that the establishment ever did was putting Uncle Joe in office, because now it's going to make it difficult for some people, not all,
Yeah.
to really, it made it easier to stop that type of change. Because quickly, what happened? They just put out Obama. Oh, let's defund the police. It's too extreme. Oh, I don't like the campaign rhetoric. And it's like, dude, you really ran on, like, Obama literally ran on "Yes, we can," and what's the other one he ran on? "Hope and Change." Yeah. So it's like, you can't be the one critical about slangs and all this type of stuff. But I digress to say that um, I give our generation hope, and also align with alliance with millennials, even though we're better. But and I do believe that we could do. I believe that Gen Xers, Millennials, and Gen Zers, we have a whole lot in common. Like Gen Xers are often the forgotten generation because of the Boomers. Millennials always get the rough end of the stick, and Gen Zers we always belittle because we're zygotes. So, and by the way, Gen X, Gen Zers have the least amount of representation. I mean, 90% of us can't vote.
Right.
So it's funny. Like millennials now, I'm pretty sure all millennials now can vote. But
Yes.
in 2008, the biggest stipulation was like, these millennials, they don't vote, they don't do anything. It's like, well, when half your generation can't vote, that means that half of them don't have that necessarily power. But then when we
Right.
could vote, like for instance, a lot of millennials voted for instance, Ed Markey, who is a establishment politician, but he
Mhm.
offered some stuff like, hey, all that progressive shit, I'm for that shit. You want me or Kennedy? And Kennedy's like, nope, I'm not for that shit. And so millennials, 70, Ed Markey got 77% of the vote because he worked with AOC. He actually gave a fuck, which, by the way, is a good political move. I'm not saying he's actually good now, but pure
Tell
politics.
everyone, give a fuck, please.
Right. So based on pure politics, it was a good move. So that's why he got 77% of the youth vote. Think about it. Every generation, um, uh, Gen Xers, Boomers, Silent Generation, he split that 50-50 with Joe Kennedy. But what got him over the edge was millennials. He won
Wow.
77% of the vote to Kennedy's 33% of the vote, which brought him over. In fact, he knew this in his speech, basically accepting becoming getting reelected as senator of Massachusetts. She said, "Thank you, young people. No shit, you better do that because I got you fucking elected." And I think people keep forgetting is that in politics, who gets you elected and what helps you elected is who you owe. So, and of course, Ed Mark. And look, I'm just speaking on like purely how to get elected. I'm not necessarily saying Ed Markey is like a saint or anything because
No.
prior to even him actually giving a fuck about young people, he was one of the most. He was the establishment of the establishment. You know,
Great.
so it's difficult at times, but that's my opinion. Gen Zers, we could create an alliance with millennials and Gen Xers because we are oftentimes the most abused and forgotten generations.
Absolutely. And I think once you guys get, that's interesting. I need to go and do some statistical research about Gen Z. I feel like there should be some statistics about some of your generation because I think they start at 16 when they count income. So I'm gonna look into that.
They should do earlier now that corporations are trying to say, hey, child labor is a thing, a good thing. And remember all these like ads saying that they're trying to, because
What?
the movement right now to like increase the minimum wage. So how companies are avoiding paying a higher minimum wage is they're trying to get 16 and 17-year-olds who are under the age of 18 to work at these fast food joints because you don't have to pay them that minimum wage. You can
Oh
pay them cheaper.
shit.
Yes, I've seen so many shit like that on Twitter. It's really fucked up. It's
The same
evilly fucked up.
people. Not that Gen Zs are not
Yeah.
not same situation at all, but just saying that I mean they'll fucking do anything to oh my god, that's ridiculous. I'm glad you said that because I had no idea. I
Also, too, there's an issue with like, oh, I think you're muted. Oh no, never mind. I just we talked at the same time, so the volume cut out. But I was gonna say is that
Go
it's
ahead.
amazing how young people like ourselves, like, and those who could be even younger than me, the notion too is that well, they're just young people. They don't need the full amount of money. Like you hear that from conservatives or whatever, and it's like, well, if a Gen Zer is doing the same amount of jobs, same amount of hours as the 40-year-old or 60-year-old working at the same field, they deserve the same amount of pay. Like age shouldn't be a discriminatory factor for you to exploit their labor. They should be paid the same amount. So I think it's pretty crazy when you see corporations explicitly after people are withholding their labor because they want more than $15 an hour, they're going after young people. They're tell your kids, hey, why don't you come work for us or whatever. So it's just like, ugh.
Mm,
And legally they could pay them lower than a minimum wage. So that's the scary part.
so fucked. That's so fucked. So yeah, like that argument negatively affects women too, right? I mean, a lot more often than we talk about at all, because the liberal establishment has made it okay for women to be, that didn't come out right. I think that, you know, we often assume in this country the nuclear family structure is in place, when statistically the majority of us do not live in that structure. I would think. I do not know that for sure. I can double check that. But you know, that also comes from a time when, you know, we were more rural, and that we were more, you know, dependent on agriculture for our economy. But you know, that is, you know, ever since the Industrial Revolution, not necessarily in place anymore, right? So, you know, the assumption that either young people or women will have another, you know, income in their life is not accurate, and not, you know, it's discriminatory. It keeps us out of, you know, it keeps us from being independent of, you know, white daddy, right?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the generational differences between city and urban. So like those in the 1950s, suburbs were the big thing. Suburbs, white picket fence, house, 2 kids, wife, commuting 30 minutes to get to work, that type of stuff. And then generations after, they become more city-like. They're like,
Well,
well,
let me clarify, if you don't mind for a sec. I the picket fence ideal of the 1950s was a pipe dream, b a way to sell tract houses, which were cheap, and you know, I think the mobile homes too at this point. And so they were selling like a plastic dream, right? They were selling like a plastic dream, but particularly they were selling a plastic dream to guys who had come back from the war and had just enough money to buy the plastic, right? So what those guys wanted at the time was what they remembered from their childhood growing up on a farm, right? And the reason I feel like I know that is because I took care of my grandpa for a long time before he passed away. He was just too young. He was like 2 years too young to go into World War II. And he always was mad about it because his brothers were in World War II, and he felt like, you know, like he was too young, and he was annoyed. Those were the glory boys, you know, and he was like, oh, I wanted to be until, you know. But he did eventually join the Air Force. But what was my point? So my point is, like, the stories that he tells me about, or the stories that he did tell me before he passed away, were like Norman Rockwell. Like, you know, oh, all 18 of us would sit down at the table, and my mom cooked a giant pig, and fucking, you know, like we would pass around a pie, and, you know, like all this, you had to eat real quick because food went quick. And you know what I mean? It was just like, it was like everything that you could possibly expect uh, of like a good old days kind of story, right? So like, even in the 1950s, you know, that reality was crumbling. Like, even as that plastic dream was being sold to people, it was still a reminiscence. It was never really a reality, I feel like, in that time period. And again, like, I would need to find some statistics on this to back it up. But I think that ever since the Industrial Revolution, which I mean, like, it started in the 1800s, but you know, it really kicked into gear like in like the late 1800s, early 1900s.
yeah, it goes
And,
in cycles.
yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, like, the Industrial Revolution, like, is when I don't remember what specifically, but it's like it's like, I think early 1800s. Like, there's like historians like agreed on a date about it.
So like
Okay.
are you talking about before the Civil War or after? Because
Um,
the Civil War
the
was like 1860.
60.
Wait. Yeah, I think it was I think it was a little bit before, because that's when like the railroad industry was kicking off, especially with oil as well. Because that was like during the
Yes,
time of like the Vanderbilts and
right, exactly. But a lot of those people, um, oh, holy shit. So apparently it says in the period between 1760 and 1820 and 1840. That's when they say it started. I mean, you could argue that it was as early as 17 whatever, because at at that point, like, they were doing, like clockwork stuff, right? So like
yeah,
that's industrial. But um I think that, it didn't really get into high gear with factories. And I mean, it certainly didn't get into high gear with the assembly line, right, until Ford in the early 19 whatevers.
20s, I
So
think. Yeah,
yeah. So did I have a point to this? I don't remember now. So that's when historians say it started. So up until this point, we had been an agricultural society for literally as long, hundreds and hundreds of centuries, right? Forever. So at, at this point, the Industrial Revolution sparked several changes, and most of those changes were in the nuclear family, because instead of having 18 kids that lived on a farm that you needed to stay on that farm to work that farm and make money on that farm, you sent all of those 18 kids out to work in the world at different factories in different cities. And those kids needed to live. So
yeah. So
that's how the idea of, living away from your parents when you reach a certain age came to be. Before the Industrial Revolution, everybody lived with their families. That just made the most sense. And in other countries, it's still like that. So
yeah, because mostly if you look out through America, the American system itself is pretty decentralized. What you're talking about explicitly is like the rural style of living, like you said it yourself, a family having 18 kids to do the farm.
mhm.
And if it's common like that throughout the rest of the nation, that means really, um, and the term working people back in the 1800s is excludes people of color.
Mhm.
I mean, even if you were a white person back then and poor, you didn't have the representation, because if you didn't own the land, you weren't allowed to vote. So there's many
Yeah,
nuances to this as well. What I'm
yeah.
getting at is the overall economy was pretty decentralized, meaning that it was spread out. It's very hard to consolidate power. It wasn't until the second or third industrial revolution where the introduction of the DuPont family, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies, the
Mhm.
Rockefellers, when they've really consolidated the industries of farming, railroads, oil, all these different types of industry, which flipped the economy, which then gave birth to this new system you're talking about. It's like the nuclear family, which happened in the 1950s. Because the idea is that, well, if we create these, it's a way of commodifying people and
Mhm.
make it more safer for the capitalistic system to function. Because if you look at it in a way, prior to the protections that we now have because of Roosevelt, who instituted social democracy, for what it's worth at the time, the farthest left you can get without pointing to actual socialism. And the reason why I did that is because he said himself he wanted to save capitalism. So I guess the reason why I'm ranting about that is because if you don't have those protections, it makes it very difficult for under the system to make things better for a decentralized economy. That's why back then, like if you didn't give a loan, if you were going through a bad recession, and you go to, and if a farmer goes to a bank, because the bank what the wow, it's late. I'm, try, I'm trying to, okay,
It's okay.
so
I'm live. I'm gonna cut it.
it's
Just let it.
fine. So the issue is that farmers would go to the bank owners because they're the ones with the money. They would ask for loans, right? But if the economy is so bad, a lot of those banks would be hesitant to give you a loan, depending on, I don't know if there's a credit system back then, but it depends on how much money you owe to that bank. And so if you're a farm owner who's desperate enough and you need that money to survive, because you'll get your land taken away from you if you're lucky enough to own the land that you're on, oftentimes there's plenty of stories where they threaten to hang one of the bank owners, hang one of the loan sharks or whatever you want to call it. And in ways, the protections put today, it prevents that type of catastrophe from happening, but it also takes the venom out of the threat that working class people have to really put pressure on the system in general. Like capitalism itself will always find ways to temporarily benefit you to long term keep the system in place. And that's why I do believe that a lot of these social things that Roosevelt did was great, but at the same time, it can be used against us by the machine to say, well, if you get uppity, we'll take this away. Like, notice how the establishment's always dangling how they're going to take away Social Security. Democrats and Republicans are doing that if we don't go along whatever corrupt thing they're going to do, which hurts us even more.
And they're taking it away anyway, slowly and surely.
Exactly. Like I watched a documentary about Franklin Roosevelt in the 80s. It was created in the 80s. And back then, Gerald Ford, Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Nixon, they were all talking about Roosevelt. And what surprised me is that all of them said, well, Roosevelt knew that like Medicare, Social Security, all these different types of progressive programs, he knew they were temporary. He knew that they weren't going to last like that all along. And it's like, they're really manufacturing consenting using Roosevelt's words to basically say that all these different social programs, it's basically giving them an excuse to cut them, you know? And it's like, no. If you look at how these laws were written, like Medicare has its own tax. Social Security has its own tax. It's not a part of the discretionary fund, you know? So it's not, so by, yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how they're using that to smear it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get into modern monetary theory with me a little bit, the argument is that because we create our own currency and we are no longer on the gold standard, technically, money is just numbers in a computer. It is not even pieces of paper, right? Because there is more money than there are pieces of paper that represent money. Right. So when and again, like I have been, you know, absorbing a lot of this because of the panel that I just did. And you know, we were talking about a job guarantee, and modern monetary theory is sort of an excellent, it goes hand in hand with a job guarantee. Sorry, it is late. So essentially, the taxation of people and corporations do not directly fund government expenditures. Okay, so social programs are not directly funded by taxes. Taxes essentially take money out of the economy so that inflation doesn't rise too high. It's like sort of a balancing mechanism. So theoretically, we could make as much money as we want to and spend it however we like. There are barriers to that because it will, you know, eventually it would definitely fuck up the economy and a balance would be disrupted. But if you keep within a certain balance, and that balance, I think, has partially to do with inflation and partially to do with the level of actual supply in the country compared to demand. So if you have like way too many goods, then that can cause inflation, I guess. I think that's how it works. Fuck, I'm gonna cut that part out because I forget. But I'm still learning.
I'm learning with you, so it's it's all right.
So we worked with a group called Real Progressives.
Oh, and I know. I've had many of them. I have I did a show with Jabari Morris, who's great.
Oh yeah, that's right, you did. That's awesome. Oh, so he probably had a lot better things to say to me about this because he definitely knows a lot more about MMT than I do.
Yeah, we were talking about social. I think it was social services, universal basic services, as well as banking. public banking. So that's what we talked about. It was a great conversation. So
Very,
I accidentally used the word tax dollars, and he said, no, nope, that's a right wing term.
yeah, yeah.
So he was
Because
right about that.
it's not really your money. It's not really your money.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if this relates or not.
What was explained to me? I'm sorry, real quick.
Go
This is
ahead.
explained to me. If say you're a country and you invent your own money, you can't really make that money mean anything until people have to pay you back in that money. That's why there are taxes. That's why I was told.
Yep, that
That's
makes
a very
sense.
way to simplified.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like what happened in Germany after World War One. I mean, they printed money like it was ongoing on trees, and from one day they woke up and the cost of bread from like prior to that to when they were spending all that money skyrocketed. Like that is terrible, like long term. So I didn't you killed the working class people during that time. So I don't
Yeah.
know if that relates or not, but that's kind of my original
Well, it
thought when I
does.
saw that.
I don't know for sure. I don't think that, I mean, Germany, I believe, is not a fiat currency. A fiat currency means that we make our own money and we're not in the gold standard. Also, it says a lot that, we are, the captains of industry when it comes to the military industrial complex and oil, like you were pointing out. Those things reinforce the dollar, right? So, Germany, fiat currency? No. Oh, yeah, here we go. I don't have my glasses on. I can't fucking see anything. No. Huh. Yeah, so whatever this article is arguing against me. Okay. Anyway, I don't know. I can't find an answer, a cute answer to this. But I recommend, if you're interested in modern monetary theory, check out Stephanie Kelton. Check out the panel that we just did. It will be up on United Left channel as well as Real Progressives. And yeah, I mean, we can I don't know. We can move on if you want.
Yeah, well, I guess we could talk about what we were talking about in our DM conversation.
Yes.
And by the way, we're about Pramila Jayapal. The video came out. It was very controversial, which I've just learned came out in January. It's just been rehashed now.
Oh.
She was on, I think she was on a podcast, forgot what her name was. But she basically said that like advocating for forced to vote would hurt our movement. I'm like, what? Like, how does that make sense at all? So, what was your initial reactions to that?
Well, I was always for force the vote. I think it is, I mean, at this point, I think that even like AOC at the time was arguing vehemently against it. But then she put out a tweet like months later saying like, well, the only way we get things done is to force the vote, right? So I don't really see that. I think that I think that there is a definite like progressive segment of the population. Okay. So there's definitely like liberals and there's definitely leftists, and I think there's a middle part of progressives. And these progressives maybe they don't, let me put it this way. It can be a perspective that that they've grown up in a capitalist system that has given them socialism. because socialism exists for the rich, right? If you have money, you have healthcare. If you have money, you have education. If you have money, you've got, if you don't need a job, but you probably got one, you know? So it's not, and if you need a job, you probably have a friend that would give you one. That's another thing too, right? So, you know, there are a lot of people who have grown up in a sort of liberal, affluent background. And I know this personally because my mother was a private school teacher, and I went to private school from 5th grade to high school. And and it happened that my high school was a very weirdly alternative liberal high school that we learned about, like, you know, it was hippies teaching us, essentially. We learned about hippie stuff. I read the People's History of the United States in high school. So, you know, it's not that I'm bragging or something. I'm just saying that, like, that's a very different education than a lot of people would get. But there is a bubble of like, you know, somewhat well-off hippies, right, that grew up and don't really, I'm trying to remember how I put it. Should I just look at it? Hold on a second. Okay, there are liberals and progressives that don't realize that their capitalist socialism, essentially. Oh, fuck, I said it better in the thing. Let me just look at it. Give me 2 seconds.
It's all right.
I had my coffee at that point, and actually I don't drink coffee, I drink soda, but where are you, Twitter, son of a bitch? Look at these glasses too. I want to wear these glasses more, but like I can't handle the glare. I have to figure out how to like not do the glare, because like, aren't these the most millennial glasses you've ever fucking seen in your life? I thought they would be perfect, but okay, where are you? Where am I? Where are we? Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah, how best to use those people to shift the Overton window. New Deal was pushed by socialists, but the start of World War II fucked their popularity over because Hitler was a socialist. Also, socialism was huge in Italy, who were their allies right at the time. And then the Cold War happened, and the propo against socialism has been strong in this country since its inception, because at our root, we intentionally established this country as a haven for business owners, which we discussed earlier. I guess I am going to wear glasses in this because now I'm going to just put this in there. And let's see. Right. So we talk about socialism for the rich at the expense of everyone else. And so the atmosphere that these people have been brought up in, they don't recognize that their socialism directly depends on other people having less. Like if there's only so many resources in the world and you have more, somebody else has motherfucking less. And so these progressives and liberals hinge their morality on meritocracy, right? Like that was also sort of the idea behind Obama, that he was a perfect example of meritocracy, right? Like, didn't he come from a poor background, and then he ended up going to these Ivy League schools, and like he was essentially picked up out of poverty because he was a genius, right? I mean, that was the story that was sold. So the lie of that is that not that it is equally by chance that he attained those opportunities, because there are so many people that have the equal amount of intelligence that did not achieve those opportunities, right? So it's the lie of meritocracy is that the people who are benefiting from being wealthy, having a million degrees, being in the academia world, these people are validated for this is so bad. It's like 10:45. I feel like an old person when my brain explodes at this late. Like
Oh, I feel you on that. My
like,
brain doesn't work after
oh,
midnight.
it's like 2 in the damn morning, and now it's 10:45, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, my brain doesn't work after midnight, so I get how you're feeling.
You're so kind. All right, let me just try to make this point, and then we can call it a night if you'd like.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Right. So the lie of meritocracy is that those who are considered the best of us deserve socialism, whereas the rest of us couldn't cut it and therefore deserve to serve those who do.
Ooh.
That's what I said. And then I also said that the best of us are determined by biased and elitist metrics, right? Because I mean, you literally everything from, you know, standardized testing to, you know, like what district you live in to like everything influences, you know, everything is biased against you, against you know, poor people, against people of any color, against women, LGBT people, right? Like it's just the system is designed for not us. Okay, that was the worst ending ever.
Oh, we're still having fun. We have to do this again sometime.
I feel so bad, honestly.
We have to do this again sometime, but earlier in the day.
Yeah, I am so sorry about this. Is such a hot fucking mess right here. And
oh, they'll love it. They love it. I mean, they love spontaneous streams. People are probably laughing at this, smoking or drinking. They're probably loving this right now.
I hope so. One of the things that I find the most important about talking about anything really, but mostly about politics, is to have a fucking sense of humor about yourself and about the world. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. Like, you know, I'm Jewish, even the Nazis were human. So like fucking like if I'm sitting in a room with Hitler, like I'm not gonna say that like I'm gonna approve of everything he did or whatever the fuck, but like if we're sitting in a room together and we're put in a survival situation, like I'm gonna have to speak to him, right? So on some level, we have to be able to find that strain of humanity within everyone. And on some level, we're going to have to be able to, you know, suppress our instincts to be offended quickly, to be argumentative about whatever. Fuck. Anyway, do you have any last thoughts?
I gotta say, I'm loving this stream we're doing right now. It's great. we're both tired as shit, so it's great. I love it.
You know what? I'm gonna cut the shit out of this, and then some of it I'm gonna put in like a bloopers reel, I think.
Oh, that's gonna be great. We should definitely do the bloopers reel.
Yes.
But I think in the end, I want to do a Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X alliance, where if we all come together, like we're if you look at it in terms of lifespan, we're going to be the last ones to die off. So we all get together now. If the establishment tries to come after younger people and other people, we're going to say fuck you, and we're going to actually push this thing along and get stuff we need to change our own material interests to make all of our lives better as a whole.
Damn right.
And in terms of my show, Revolutionary Jargon, on the FHO network, I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. I'll be figuring that out the next couple of weeks for my latest episode. Usually my stuff is done Sunday and Monday, but been kind of lazy. So we'll see where that goes along those lines. But you should check out our other shows. Check out Deeply Serious. That's Nick's show he does on Tuesday. He had a special episode with the Black Leftist panel today. You should check that out. You should check out Monday's Nerdolitics with Jackie Poles, as well as our new FHL co-host Meg. So they co-host the Nerdolitics. That's a great show. Wednesdays we had the Straight Out of Politics. CJ has been on leave for a little bit, but he should be back soon. Thursday show is our roundtable. You should check that out. Is where as many FHO co-hosts we can get on. It's the power 2 hours where we talk about anything that you guys are interested in and stuff we're interested in. So it's fun. Fridays is my show. Lately, I've been doing pre-recorded content because it's easier for me to talk about and digest stuff. But if I do go live or pre-recorded, it's always 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Never changes, never fails. Saturday is Rome's day, so spontaneously you'll see Rome come up a stream on Haps. He says, "Hey, come hang, ask him questions." He loves questions. Just to see what he's doing. Sometimes he's barbecuing, sometimes he's working on some stuff. So you never know. Just it's always a good fun stream to watch. And lastly, Sunday's show is the JB show, where JB Fawn, he's had some pretty good interviews. He's had Richard Meadhurst on. That was pretty great. He had one with Kashama Sawant. That was also great as well. So make sure to check out all our stuff, as well as our new co-host, Sabrina Savati, also known as Savvy Sav. She's very phenomenal. So check out her stuff. And you'll like FHL because we try to have a deep bench and we always have many different perspectives and issues we like talking about. So you should check us out.
Excellent. Well done. That was great. All right, cool. Cool. So I think that's a wrap. I will say though that I feel like hopefully millennials are coming around to your perspective, Gen Z. I hope that we've, sucked enough cock to have a bad taste in our mouth. So we'll see. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much again for coming on, and you're awesome. Like, let's do this more.
Oh, definitely. Earlier in the day, so we can
when I have some more energy. Or Jesus Christ, soda. Yeah. Totally.
Right. Another great ending. Another great ending.
I'm just gonna put like that's all, folks. Right?
All right.
Like just get the big hook thing to come and fucking drag me off stage at this point.
Right.
Oh man, anyway. All right, man. Well, thanks again.